Hey everybody, welcome back to the next part in my Dialing In series, Microphone Edition. So I started this series last week where I decided, since I get tons of questions about the microphones that we have, to work with the cab blocks in our Line 6 Helix, that I would take a deep dive in and talk very specifically about each microphone in hopes that it'll not only answer some folks' questions, but inspire some folks to maybe try mics that they were a little shy to try or uncertain of, and kind of go into it maybe, knowing what the outcome will be a little better before they even try a particular mic, just because we now have the knowledge of what the particular characteristics of that mic will be. Today I'm talking about probably my all-time favorite dynamic mic to use on a guitar cabinet. And I used to own one of these, much like the Royer R121 back from the first video I did in this little mini series. So this is a model of the Sennheiser MD421U microphone. Very well-renowned microphone, used on a lot of recordings. Used as a microphone on toms, on drums a lot, does a beautiful job of that, but very, very nice on guitar cabinet. So today, again, we're gonna kind of take a look at the Sennheiser 421 in comparison to the Shure SM57, much like I did with the Ribbon 121 comparing it to the 57. The 57 is such a flagship mic for recording guitar cabinet that taking a look at the frequency response compared to other mics really helps us to see and visualize what the difference might be in what we're hearing. So let's do that. Let's take a look at the Sennheiser MD421 frequency response and compare it to the SM57. So here we have the two of them up on screen labeled so you can tell which is which. Now, what you'll notice, and one thing I really like about the MD421, is how it doesn't roll off the low end quite as much and as quickly as the SM57 does. It also starts to rise a little earlier once it hits around 1,000 hertz. You kind of see by the time it gets to 2,000 hertz, we're up a few dB. It keeps rising so that it almost gets up around 10 dB, up around 4,000 to 5,000 hertz. Whereas the SM57 also does that, but kind of climbs a little bit later and rolls off much quicker and a little bit more of a jaggedy high end, I guess we could refer to it, whereas the top end of the MD421 stays nice and smooth up near the top, and then it kind of rolls off right around, say, 15,000 hertz, where the SM57 kind of rolls off earlier. Now, that's not to say one is necessarily better than the other. Now, you might also be asking what these dotted lines are. An actual 421 has a bass roll-off control with, I believe, 5 settings. If you notice up here, it says bass control M, and that's the dark line. That's the music. I think the M stands for music on that, and that's what we would probably use it for if we were recording guitar. If you're using it to record vocals, to get rid of some of the proximity effect of being very close to the mic, you might use one of the roll-offs. But we're going to be talking about it on the M setting, which is what I believe it's set at for the Helix. So now that we've compared the frequency response graphs, we can actually dive over into HX Edit here and take a look and see what we have. So I've set up a real quick little preset. I pulled up the RevGen purple amp model, didn't touch a thing on it. This is just as it comes up, stock. I threw in a 412 Greenback 25 cab, 2 snapshots like I did last time. First one is SM57 with all the highs and low cuts taken off at 1 inch. And then when I switch to number 2 snapshot, it goes to the 421 dynamic with those same settings, just so we can hear the difference. So here is the sound of the SM57. I have a touch of verb on so it's not so dry and in your face. That's the 57, here's the 421. You'll notice a nicer bottom end, in my opinion, some folks might think otherwise, on the 421 compared to the SM57. I really like the way that bottom end is a little more rounded out, and something about the highs seems a little tiny bit smoother to me. So there's a little demo of how those two different mics sound. So the 421, if I want that dynamic sound or something that's close to a 57, but just with a few tweaks that come in naturally, I almost always gravitate towards the 421. Now, when using a dynamic mic, I do oftentimes like to combine it with my other favorite mic, the Ribbon 121 or the Royer R121, which I talked about last time. And there was a very specific reason I started with that mic, because I wanted to get that one out of the way so then I could incorporate it in with some other mics in this series. So what I would do to incorporate that, and one way you can, this is one way you can, you could also go to a dual block cab. We could just copy and paste this block, yank it down onto our second path and just kind of organize things here. Go to our split block, make sure that we are set to split AB. All right, so right now we're coming out of the amp and we're feeding both of these cabinets equally, and then they're coming out the other side. So there's a couple ways we can do this. We could come over here, and I'm going to make sure this is on the 421, and then I'm going to come here and I'm going to get rid of the snapshots here, and I'm going to bring this up to a 121 ribbon. We'll keep it 1 inch back for now. So I could take this slider, and when I route all the way to A100, that's only routing it through path A, so I'm only getting the 421 mic. If I come back over here and route this all the way the other way to B100, I'm getting just the ribbon mic, and if I put it right in the middle, we get a combination of both microphones. Now, we could then just roll more or less towards one side, so we'd have more of the 421 here mixed in with the Ribbon 121. And we could just slide that around until we find a balance between the two mics we like. Now, another way we could do that is to set that right in the middle and come to our merge block and just turn the levels up and down on each mic as well. So I could come in and say I want less of the B level, maybe I want less of the ribbon mic. Or maybe I want less of the dynamic mic. To the point where if I pull that right out, so we can adjust that in a number of ways. We could also just come in and throw in, I won't actually do this, but we could go to a dual cab block and I could choose, let's say, the greenback 25 and then choose that for both of them. Set one for the 421 dynamic, one for the 121 ribbon. You could keep the low and high cuts if you want, or discard them. It doesn't really matter, whichever works for you. And then we could simply use the level control on either one to decide how much of each we want. We really be that simple. Now, the only thing to keep in mind there is that's a stereo block that will pan each cabinet hard left and right. So you would have to have a mono block after it to sum it to mono, so we'd have them both straight up the middle. And you could do that by simply throwing a mono gain block on, and that would do the job for you if you don't already have a mono block after the fact. So there again is the Sennheiser MD421 mic, probably my favorite dynamic mic. I hope now from seeing the frequency response and hearing it in comparison to the SM57, you kind of get a better feel for what that's like. But that's kind of my more go-to microphone as far as a dynamic mic. If I'm looking for that edginess, brightness, I kind of like what the 421 does a little bit more than the SM57. But again, your mileage may vary. There's nothing wrong with the 57. It's been used on countless recordings for good reason, right? And a lot of times it just works really well in the mix. But I find the 421 does also. And then obviously another favorite trick is to combine it with a ribbon mic and then figure out a way to balance the two so that they work really nice and almost acts as a bit of an EQ so that we can pick more brightness or more darkness. The other thing we can do in this situation as well, if we are balancing those two, let's say we have them on an even split, we could come in and pull the distance of the ribbon mic back just a little bit to get rid of some of that proximity effect on it. And that would work as well. So I hope you enjoyed that quick look at one of my favorite dynamic mics, the Sennheiser MD421, otherwise known as the 421 dynamic mic. And I hope that maybe you'll try that in some of your presets, and maybe you'll prefer that to when, situations when you might have gone to an SM57, and also try combining it with the ribbon mic, and I think you're gonna enjoy that. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I'll be back soon with more in this series and a lot more content. So please subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell notification, and keep notified when I do put new videos out. And also hit the like button and share this with anybody who you think would get some use out of watching it or some enjoyment out of watching it. Thanks so much for your time, for tuning in. I'll be back really soon. Ciao for now.